He's back.
Three! Oh, my goodness! Exploding to the rim and slamming it down with authority.
We talked about those screens, the space you get, and when Steven sets them, there's the benches erupted.
But where exactly is Steven Adams now?
And here he is making his Rockets regular season debut. Missed the first 3 games of this season with that calf strain. Great to have Steven Adams back and on the floor.
So the man they call the strongest in the NBA is in Texas with the Houston Rockets. He was traded from the Memphis Grizzlies during a long playing break after knee surgery.
Yeah, I mean, he is working his way into shape. I saw a number where he hadn't played in 646 days, I think.
But so far he's had little court time, and head coach Ime Udoka has him in bubble wrap, counting on a long-term payoff.
As he gets his way into shape, we understand what he brings to the team. Whoever he sets the screen on is going to get space to operate, and then you have to account for him on the offensive glass. So he's done those little intangibles that he's done his whole career, but will only get better going forward. So
a new city, a new house, and hang on, is he really sleeping on a mattress on the floor?
This picture that Steven Adams posted of his new apartment in Houston is going viral because he has already made over $157 million in his career. But the best part is the bed, since there is no way a 7-foot man can sleep on that. But it turns out that Adams doesn't even sleep on beds. He said the floor makes him tougher, and the bed is actually for his dog.
I'm Alexia Russell, and today on The Detail, he's still our richest athlete and one of just a handful of Kiwi sports people who are globally recognised. It seems, however, that fame hasn't changed him. This is a Steven Adams celebration.
Go ahead, ask some questions.
Tim Somerville, Sky TV highlights package man, is that what we can call you?
I think you can call me highlights editor, highlights editing lead, whatever you want.
How often do those highlights involve Steven Adams?
As much as we show him on TV. So haven't had him yet this season, but hopefully we're at the mercy of ESPN, whatever they put on. But hopefully we'll get to see him a few times this year.
But maybe not as much as he has in the past, perhaps, because he's just come back from rehab, but he's now not a starter for the first time, really, in his career, right?
Yeah, so he's been out for close to 2 years now. I guess January 2023, he went down with his knee injury. And that's when he was playing for the Memphis Grizzlies. Since then, he's been rehabbing, and while he was rehabbing, they traded him to the Houston Rockets, which is quite a young team, and he's 31 now, I believe. So he's in the latter sort of stages of his NBA career, and so he's sort of taking on a different role, sort of more of a impact player off the bench and mentoring the younger players now.
I think his IQ and communication has been very invaluable for our young guys. It's another coach out there. Obviously, he sets screens, gets guys open, but the talking, teaching, extra coaching he's been doing, guys, has been really good.
For all of his career up till this point, pretty much, he's been the starting center on whatever team he's on. But the Rockets have a young player, Alperen Sengun from Turkey, who's pretty good, and they've just signed him to like a $200 million contract. So they're expecting a lot out of him. So Steven's going to be coming off the bench playing behind him.
And what's Steven's contract with?
He's in the second year of a 2-year contract, which was $25 million US. So he's getting $12.5 million a year. Which
still not a bad payday for someone who's not starting.
Yeah, not bad at all. And his contract's up at the end of this season. So he'll be hoping to prove that he's still got it and hopefully either re-sign with the Rockets or get picked up by another team after this one.
He's not really ever expressed a preference for where he goes, has he?
No, I think he's a pretty competitive guy. I think he just wants to be in a winning situation, which he has been for most of his career. When he was early on, he was with the Oklahoma City Thunder, who were contenders for the championship for most of the time he was there. And while he was with the Grizzlies, they were one of the best teams in the Western Conference while he was there. So he wants to be in a winning situation, I think. And this Rockets, we're not sure how they'll go yet. Like I say, they're young, so they've got the building blocks to be good, but we'll see. I mean, he'll definitely help them in a positive way, I think.
The Grizzlies were quite young too, but they also had a couple of people who got them into a bit of trouble. I mean, do you think that he'll be pleased to be away from that kind of thing into a more low-key kind of group?
Yeah, I think potentially. I think you're talking about Ja Morant there, who was there.
Taking guns to nightclubs.
Yeah, so he was an all-star player, one of the best players in the league, but it seems like he just doesn't quite have his head on straight, or didn't at the time. And I don't think Steve's... that's definitely not what the kind of stuff he's into. So I think in that regard, he would be pretty keen to be away from that. And the Rockets' young players, I think the off-court behavior issues definitely aren't a thing. So I think it's a different kind of maturity level that he's got with now.
Right, so he's been playing since he was a kid, really. So how many years now has he been in the NBA?
So he was drafted in 2012. So he's been in the league for. He only played 1 year at University of Pittsburgh, and then went straight to the league and was taken with a lottery pick, which is one of the top picks in the draft. And so he's been in the league 10 plus years now. This injury he's had is the first major injury he's had in the time he's in the league. So he's a really experienced player, and I think he's a very respected player around the league too.
And he's only 31, and at the NBA, that's just coming into your best years, right?
Oftentimes, yeah. I think around 30 is usually the prime, when your body's fully developed and you've got the experience, your skills are at their peak, and your body can still do what it wants to do. So that'll be the interesting thing to see how he responds, because when you're out of action for as long as he's been, sometimes it takes a while for the body to get back to where it needs to be.
After his first game back, Adams told reporters he's not quite there yet.
Feel limited in any movement in any sort of way while you're out there?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's to do, if you're talking physically, no. A lot of it's going to be the mental component. Typically with surgeries, that's why they call it a 2-year process, because physically you'll heal on the first year. Second year is then the mental part, getting the connection back, how it is. So it's just that mental part now, but then also the mental part of the game. Flow, timing, reading the body language, stuff like that.
And they're easing him back in. He had his first game the other day, actually, against the San Antonio Spurs. Played 14 minutes off the bench. They sort of gave him 3 little 5-minute bursts. I think they'll probably do that for a while, just to ease him back in, because it seems like it was his posterior cruciate ligament, and it's in the back of your knee, that he did. And he ended up needing surgery on it, which I believe he had last November. So it's been like a year. So it's healed up in terms of the surgery, but then match fitness is a whole different thing. So he'll need to play on it for a while to I guess, get the confidence back and sort of just the match fitness back as well.
Because he had a calf injury too in that first game as well. So he's maybe a little bit older, a bit nigglier, a bit worn out.
Yeah, well, often as well with leg injuries, when you injure one part, then other muscles have to compensate for that injury, and you end up tweaking other things, which is why I think it's quite important that they're just easing him back in, because it's quite easy to injure different things.
So how did he do in that first match?
So he looked pretty good. So he was up against Victor Wembanyama, who's the San Antonio Spurs French superstar.
Oh my gosh, he's got arms like a albatross.
Yeah, so he's 7'3" and with like a wingspan, like 8 feet wide. But he's quite small, like bulk-wise.
Sort of a lightweight.
Yeah, and Steven Adams is one of the strongest guys in the league. It's his reputation. And you saw it a couple of times when he was pushing Wembanyama around. Like, Wembanyama was trying to box him out for a rebound, and he just shoved him out of the way, grabbed it, and put it back. So
why doesn't he get called for fouls when he does that? He really literally just pushes them out of the way.
I think you just... Well, like, he's been in the league long enough to know the tricks to
know where the line is.
Yeah, know what you can get away with and what you can't. And other players don't want to mess with him either. He's got that reputation as someone that's always one of the sort of most tough guys in the league, I guess. And yeah.
I mean, there was a fantastic headline.
Steven Adams picked up a basketball with another human being still attached.
Bit of a scrimmage ball, and he lifted up the basketball with a man attached to it. The American media seem to make quite a lot of the kind of quirkiness, the weirdness, and the strength that Adams has. Do they really know kind of how to take him?
I think it did take a long time for them to pick up his sense of humor, I think, because he's got the very dry New Zealand sense of humor where he'll say something that's a joke and play it off straight, and sometimes they take it seriously and don't get it. But I think they love the sort of toughness, because that's sort of that was a big thing, like, I don't know, 20 years ago in the NBA, where you had all the tough guys that you didn't mess with, and they pushed people around and committed hard fouls, and that's sort of gone from the game. And he's a bit old school like that. Like, he's not a dirty player, but he's just tough, and oppositions don't want to mess with him. And
getting into it on the floor.
Steven Adams literally lifting up Tony Bradley, who is not a small guy. He literally just lifted him up and carried him away from Ja Morant.
Tony Bradley is 6'7", 220. And Adams just hoists him.
I asked them to release my point guard, and he wasn't releasing my point guard. So I was, I told him, I'm going to have to take you away now, mate. And then off he went, trying to defuse the situation.
But Steven Adams always going to protect his teammates, and he did so here.
He looks after his sort of more starry teammates and stuff. So I think he's, in that regard, a real good guy to have around.
The other thing I noticed is he doesn't get much in the way of off-court interviews anymore.
The post-game interviews tend to be with like the star of the game, with like the top scorer or whatever, and he's not going to be that.
They also don't like swearing in America. And I noticed that he tries to drop the odd F-bomb. I wonder if it's so that he can avoid getting interviewed.
Yeah, I feel like that might be the case as well. While he was out for a year doing his rehab, he basically just disappeared, and there were like very few updates about his health and how he was and what was going on. And basically we didn't hear from him until the media day, just sort of with the Rockets just before the season.
How hard has it been to miss as much time as you missed the last couple of years?
How hard?
Yeah.
Like what? Like emotionally? Or...
Yeah.
Yes, sucks. It feels bad, dude. Yeah, it feels bad. But it's okay. It's just one of those joints where it happens, and you kind of just got to rewire your brain a little bit.
And it had been about a year since we'd heard from him before that. So I think, even though he's really good with the interviews when he does them, I think he's quite happy just to not do them and just to disappear.
Where did he go? Was he here?
He was all over the place. Like, he was back here for a bit, but he was just sort of doing his rehab by himself. And I think the fact that he got traded in the middle of his rehab, so he was with the Grizzlies and their medical staff, and then he got traded, and I guess he wouldn't really have any relationships with the Rockets, so he didn't really join them so much, and just sort of, I guess he had his own medical people and was just sort of healing away and doing all the rehab, and it seems like he's done all the right things.
Yeah. What does he do when he comes back here?
I mean, he's got his basketball camps that he runs with the kids.
Working on their game with a basketball icon. Kiwi NBA star Steven Adams was balling with young aspiring athletes at Dunedin's Edgar Centre on Thursday as part of his Sports Pathways program.
I mean, he came from quite a poor upbringing and that, so I think he's quite big with giving the sort of next generation like opportunities and stuff, which is cool.
Yeah, he's quite notorious for not spending money on himself, isn't he? He doesn't wear the flash clothes or the bling.
He's a very minimalistic guy. He doesn't have expensive tastes.
Saving his money for the kids back home.
Yeah.
Treat yourself this week now that you signed a new deal. What are you going to get?
Nah, not at all, bro. Nah, just go have a feed somewhere with the boys. Yeah, I've never been too much of a buy anything crazy. Yeah, nah, just kind of chill out.
He has a farm, doesn't he? So
I believe so. And I know he likes to go pig hunting, just sort of disappear out into the bush and stuff. So I feel like he's the kind of guy when he retires, he'll just sort of fade away and not really be in the spotlight, and you'll hear stories about him and sort of not really see him. Like he doesn't want to be the center of attention, which is, it's quite bizarre because he's so good at being in the public eye, but then he also doesn't want it. So.
Yeah. Talking about when he retires, do you think because we're seeing a lot of mentoring coming out from him now, seeing him talking to those young players and little shots of him in practice really showing the young guys how he boxes out and how he screens.
He's talking the whole time, whether it's, encouraging or trying to discourage guys. And so he's great. I mean, it's another veteran voice to the group and someone who's been around and seen a lot of things. And so that only benefits everybody. But yeah, he's doing a lot of coaching on the court, pulling guys aside, but also talking in the middle of games as well.
Do you see him being a potential coach, going the Sean Marks way, or do you think he'll scuttle back home and just live the life?
Yeah, it's quite hard to know. I mean, he does seem like he's a really respected mentor and stuff, and actually does have and is happy to pass all his knowledge on. I mean, he doesn't strike me as someone who'd want to get into coaching necessarily. Like, I mean, he's going to have earned enough money in his career where he never has to work again once he retires. And I sort of get the feeling he sort of would just go to his farm and just chill out. But yeah, it'd be nice if he did sort of have mentor, like especially the up and coming New Zealand players, and pass on all this knowledge, because we don't have many people playing at the level that he's played at. I mean, never really. Like, he's the easily the biggest basketball star we've had. So you definitely don't want that knowledge to go to waste. It's quite tricky in a way in New Zealand with the fact that he's never actually played for the Tall Blacks national team, which I think some people hold against him. Even it's complicated because obviously you play for the national team, you don't get any money, and you're putting your body on the line, and it's a big risk.
And he has a bit of beef, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he does have a bit of beef because he doesn't feel like Basketball New Zealand supported him when he was coming up, and I mean, that's all fair enough. I guess it's hard to know exactly what happened, but I think it seems like a lot of people that would have been held against him a lot more than it has, because I think he's done so much other things for New Zealand, like with his camps and putting New Zealand on the map, and he's shown that he is proud to be a New Zealander and all that. So yeah, it's interesting that we've kind of overlooked the fact that he's never actually played for New Zealand.
Do you think he ever will?
The word was that he was going to play for the Tall Blacks after the season when he hurt his knee. That was they'd mended the fences and he was going to actually finally play for New Zealand. And then he hurt his knee and hasn't played since. So it's tricky now because potentially for the rest of his career he's going to be nursing his injury in the off season and rehabbing and trying to be healthy. So the window may have passed, but you'd hope at least at some point, even just before he retires or something, he'd pull on the Tall Blacks jersey and play, because it'd be awesome to see.
Sports writers generally agree there are probably only 3 other Kiwi athletes recognised to such a level around the globe: Chris Wood, Lydia Ko and Kane Williamson. That's probably why independent sports website The Niche Cache spends quite some time shining its spotlight on the basketballer.
There's a lot of things about Kiwi sports that we do like to, celebrate on The Niche Cache, and Steven Adams seems to somehow represent an extremely high percentage of those things.
Nick Robinson is the author/podcaster behind a lot of the Adams news.
There's a lot of great Kiwi sportsmen and women going around the world these days and doing incredible things. Steven Adams hits he hits the mark on his success level, the things he's achieved in the NBA, completely unprecedented for a Kiwi. He has done this whole thing with just a great attitude, with a great personality, someone who's very funny, someone who's very enjoyable to hear speak in interviews. And also at the same time, I think he represents something that Kiwis like to see in themselves from people who represent them overseas, and that he, speaking from his particular perspective, he is a basketballer who does the hard yards. He's the guy who doesn't need the credit. It's not about ego. It's very much about how can I help my team win? How can we be successful? What can I do to help? What does the coach want me to do? I will do that. I'm not worried about anything else. That kind of stuff. I think that resonates with a lot of New Zealanders as well. As maybe a little bit cringy to speak about things from such generalized terms, but Steven Adams, he brings that out in you, perhaps.
Yeah. And while it resonates with New Zealanders, and I do agree with you that we like to imagine that our sports heroes have some degree of humility, I guess, it's something unique for Americans, isn't it? I mean, they are, would it be fair to say, more used to the flashy, blingy NBA player lifestyle?
Yes, I think that would be fair to say. And yeah, I guess Adams goes against the grain a little bit in that way, because it's very much like I think especially in the NBA, when you look at, all American top level sports folks are, getting a lot of money, getting a lot of success, getting a fair bit of fame. I think in the NBA, there's this aspect of the extremity of the contracts that guys are getting, the amount of money they're making. And I think maybe even in the NBA more than anything else, because, maybe you get this a bit with NFL quarterbacks just because the style of that, but a lot of American sports folks are under helmets the whole time,
Yeah.
In the NBA, you get a lot more of the personality coming through with these guys. And I think that does lead to an environment where maybe, I don't know, there's a level of egotism that's I don't really encouraged, embraced. I'm not sure. It's earned, so I don't want to be too rough on this kind of speaking at words like arrogance. I'm not going to go that far, but Steven Adams definitely, he goes against the grain in that way.
Yeah, I mean, there's a vibe that he doesn't fit into, isn't there? There's the manicured hair and the what did they wear to court today, and the basketball court I'm talking about. And then you get Steven Adams posting to Instagram that his new digs are basically a mattress on the floor of an empty room. People are going, what?
Yeah, and he turns up to games in jandals and the same camo hoodie that he's been wearing for years on years on years. Like, he's not bothered by the lifestyle in the way that many others are. And yet at the same time, he's made an obscene amount of money playing basketball.
Yeah. What about him makes you kind of invested in his career?
Well, I mean, at first, it's very much just a matter of, like, he's the only New Zealander in this environment. But there had been a couple of New Zealand players before who'd made it to the NBA. I think Kirk Penny had gone there, Sean Marks, of course. It's a short list, though, and Steven Adams is just to have gone as long as he has, and the way that the amount of stuff he's achieved in there and the minutes that he's played and all this, like, I don't know. And then at the same time, as he gets embedded in the NBA, you get to know more of his personality, see that side of the stuff flourish. He just he seems like a cool dude,
How does his career and our perception of his career compare to other high-profile New Zealand sports people overseas? I'm thinking about Chris Wood, people like that.
Yeah, it's a little difficult one to answer, to be honest, because Chris Wood I've often felt like he's very underrated. I think Steven Adams has been underrated in an NBA context, but I don't think he's necessarily been underrated by New Zealanders watching that NBA context from afar. So, yeah, it's a little bit hard to compare that. I'm not sure.
You don't have to spend long trolling around the internet to find the Adams clips that, who's the strongest man in the NBA, and look at all these hard screens, and that time Steven Adams did this. I mean, is that part of the attraction?
Yeah, I might be responsible for a few of those clips, to be honest.
Is that part of the fun, though, that it's actually, he's highly amusing?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I don't think he would have the same, I don't know what to call it, cultural crossover or whatever, if there weren't all these other aspects to what he does. It's not just about being good at basketball. That is the main thing. Like, he wouldn't have the other things without that if he wasn't also very good at what he does. But he's very good at it in a specific way that maybe invites a lot of this kind of more analytical approach to it. And also, he's funny. He's really quotable. You hear him in interviews, and the way he speaks, it also goes beyond the humor too, because he also just has this ability, which I think is really rare in athletes, especially top level athletes, of being able to break down complicated sporting tactical aspects in a really simple, digestible way for the interviewer, for the person watching at home, whatever it is, for the fan.
He would downplay it so hard too. Like, if you ask him what his response, I'm just thinking of like what he would say. Like, he would be like, "Mate, it's just
trying to get the ball, mate.
Yeah, a little bit of work.
It's just basketball, mate.
Yeah, just figuring it out."
And the crazy thing is, and you ask him like about the science of it. And he blows that off too. And yet, if you ever go out, when you guys are like warming up, he's standing under the goal watching the angles. But he will tell you that that's not what he's doing.
He will tell you he's just there under the goal looking at the rim.
Which is another underrated aspect of what he does. Wherever he's played, and he's played in a few different cities now. He's at Oklahoma City for a long time, but since then, he's been through New Orleans, he's been through Memphis, he's now in Houston. Everywhere he goes, the local media absolutely fall in love with him.
I hang out with a lot of big basketball fans, and I mean, we're immensely proud of him just his on-court achievements alone. But I think the thing as well that he's managed to just stay himself, and he's such a New Zealander, and we can recognize like his sense of humor and the way he talks and the way he dresses with the bare feet and swan dries and that sort of carry on. And it's just really cool that all of this fame and money just doesn't seem to have changed him at all. And I think that just adds to his popularity here, where it's like, this guy is just one of us. I mean, obviously he's 7 feet tall and immensely talented and stuff, but he's just a New Zealander, and he's made it all happen, and he doesn't have to change and sell out or anything, which is awesome.
Frankly, it's just not been the same without him, for the last 600 odd days. It's lovely to have him back.
That's it for this week. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and New Zealand On Air. This episode was engineered by Alex Harmer and produced by Gwen McClure. Thanks to Tim Somerville and Nick Robinson. I'm Alexia Russell.
Cheers. Leave on that note. Fairly well.